Heat, Chapter 26, page 185. Manny said this was the way it had to work out. The Clippers against the Westchester South Giants in the semifinals. Winners making it to the District 22 finals a week from Friday night. The District 22 finals at Yankee Stadium. Winners going from there to Williamsport for the World Series. Us against Justin the Jerk, basically, Manny said. It had been 4 days since Michael had given his note to El Grande. Still no word from Ellie. The Yankees had played one three-game series at home against the Royals and then hit the road again. 2 nights ago, the Clippers had made the semis by beating Harlem River Drive 8-7. Cal finally winning the game with an RBI single in the bottom of the sixth. Now Michael and Manny were in Michael's apartment, killing time in the afternoon before the Westchester game, batting practice, at McCombs, not until 5:30. They had the Yankee-Oriole game from Baltimore on the radio. The Yankees were losing again, the way they had the night before El Grande had left the game with an ankle sprain or something worse. Even now, the announcers weren't sure. All they knew was at the bottom of the first, after the rain delayed the start of the game for a couple hours, he had landed awkwardly on his left leg, which collapsed underneath him. The original thought was that it was just a high sprain, but the morning they had decided to send him back to New York to see the Yankee team doctor and have an MRI, which would show whether he had done some ligament damage. The bad news just never stopped, Michael thought. Manny could always tell when Michael had stopped listening to him. Are you more interested in the Yankee game or our game? He said. I can't be interested in both? Come on, you know you still want a piece of old Justin. Yeah, only I won't be playing, Michael said. When you look at it this way, Justin and his dad had already beaten me. Somebody at the Orioles must have belted one into the gap because John Sterling, the Yankees radio announcer, was yelling about the ball rolling all the way to the wall. Manny reached over and turned down the sound. Hey, Michael said. Manny said, I just want to say this one time, and I promise not to say it again. It should be you sticking it to Justin tonight. There was no good answer to that, so Michael didn't say anything. There are a lot of differences between them, but this was the biggest. Manny always kept talking, whether he had something to say or not. I was sure they would have found it by now, Manny said. My birth certificate? I thought Mr. Gibbs' guy was supposed to help. He said he'd try, and he did, Michael said. He spoke to Carlos the other night, but all he could tell him was that he hadn't made any more progress in Havana than he had. Great, Manny said. Manny asked if Michael wanted to watch Little Big League, one of his favorite baseball movies, saying there was just enough time for BP for them to watch it all the way to the end. Because you didn't see it to the end, you wouldn't know if everything came out all right, Michael said. Even if it had all the other 9,000 times we've watched it. That's why I love the movie, Bud, Manny said. Gotta have those happy endings. Manny pushed the tape into the VCR, came over the came over, his face serious now, watched out and gave Michael a close fist. Michael tapped it. You really gotta do a happy ending one of these days, Michael said. Or Manny said. They heard the phone just ring as they closed the apartment door behind Manny. Manny kept walking down the hall. Manny kept walking down the hall, but Michael fumbled to get his keys out of his pocket, thinking it might be Ellie. He go back into the apartment on the fourth ring and picked up the receiver, out of breath, and thought of Ellie, making him forget for a minute Carlos's rule about not answering the phone, only to hear that Mrs. C was on the other end, telling him that she'd have a plate of pasta for him and Carlos after the game if they wanted it. Michael thanked her and hung up. When he caught up with Manny at the elevator, Manny had raised his eyebrows. Not her, Michael said. Forget it, he told him now. Just do what you've always done and focus on the game, even if it's a game you're not playing. Beat Justin, the jerk, and his dad, and get inside Yankee Stadium finally, even if it wasn't the way you planned or dreamed. During our regular season, some of the Clippers, and sometimes a lot of the Clippers, would show up late for batting practice. Not today. When Michael and Manny got there at 5:15, the whole team except for Manny was already on the field. Must be a big game or something, Manny said, and grabbed his catcher's mitt out of his bat bag and went to warm up Michael Anthony Farrow, who was waiting for him over the Clippers bench. Anthony had pitched 3 innings of relief against the Harlem River Drive, but had gotten 3 days off now, which meant he could pretty much pitch tonight until his arm fell off if he needed him to. The players from Westchester South had gone to run some warm-up laps around the basketball courts. Mr. Mender, who had been pitching BP, had gone over the fence and was talking on his cell phone. He put it down for a second and yelled at the guys in Maria to get off the field for some infield practice as long as the Westchester was still running. "Michael, you hit them grounders," he said. Michael took his own bat out, hit a nice one whopper to Chris Norris at third. The second time around in the infield, he heard somebody yell, "Hey, Arrow!" It wasn't from the Westchester side. He turned and saw Justin leaning against the small chain link fence and protected the visiting team's bench. Michael turned and pointed to himself. "Yeah?" Justin said. "Hey," Michael said, not knowing what else to say. "Shouldn't you be warming up by now?" Justin said. Then, in a sarcastic tone, "Oh, my bad. I forgot you're too old to pitch in this league." "You know I'm not," Michael said, then added, "So does your father." "Prove it," Justin said. Then he smacked his forehead and said, "My bad again. You can't prove it, can you?" At that point, a baseball smacked into the fence about a foot from Justin's head, and the impact was making him fall back and nearly fall down. Michael whipped around to see it had come from and saw Manny standing halfway between home and first. "Oops," he said. Then he rubbed his fingers together like a flying rubbing its wings. "Darn thing must have slipped when I was trying to throw it to third." Justin started around the fence like he was coming for Manny, but his father jumped from the bench, where he'd been writing in his scorebook, and grabbed him from behind, putting him in a bear hug. It didn't stop Justin's big mouth. "You want some of me?" he yelled across the field at Manny. It didn't just stop Justin's big mouth. "You want some of me?" he yelled across the field at Manny. Manny turned his head and spit, and then he said, "You have no idea." Justin acted like he was trying to get loose from his dad, but everybody could see he really wasn't. "What's that supposed to mean?" he yelled. "There you have it," Manny said to Michael, ignoring Justin now. "The guy is totally clueless." Justin's dad walked his son back to the bench, then came around and stood inside the fence at the spot where he'd coached for the last game his team had played against him. He pointed at Manny and said, "Why don't you worry about your own team, son, and we'll worry about ours." Michael thought the dad had no clue either. If he thinks that's going to be the last word, he had a better chance of going across the street and managing the Yankees than he did of getting the last word with Manny Cabrera. "It's like my mom says," Manny went on, for all to hear. "Rotten apple never falls far from the tree." "All right, Manny, that's enough," Mr. Menu said now, stuffing his cell phone into his pocket of his pants. Manny tried to look innocent. "I was just saying," Mr. M said. "Always." Justin's dad said, "You should do a better job of controlling your players, coach." "I know," Mr. M said, but Michael knew it was like a clown smile somebody had painted on him. "Don't you just hate it when boys act like boys?" He motioned the Clippers to come in so that the Westchester could take the field, and even now, a half hour before the first pitch, you just had to breathe the air around the Clippers bench to know how big the game was, how excited they all were, even as they all tried to act as if they were just getting ready for another game. Papa used to say that the best of sports just the air around a game like this, the excitement and the nervousness in your stomach, and the waiting for the umpire to say play ball. Mr. M gathered them around him now and told them what he told them before ever playoff every playoff game. "There won't be an adult here tonight. They won't trade places with you in a heartbeat, he said, and that includes me. Michael was in the back of the group. He looked across the field to the Westchester bench, while their assistant coach hit ground balls to the infielders. On the other side of the fence, Justin warmed up, pitching to his dad. He was throwing hard now, and every once in a while his father would point with his mitt, the way Papa used to, as if to say, "Now you're humming." Michael couldn't take his eyes off of Justin. The guy's the biggest jerk in the world, Michael thought, and tonight I'd give anything to trade with him. It was not the best beginning. Westchester got 3 runs off Anthony in the top of the first. Walk, single, home run by Justin. It was 3-zip just like that before all the Westchester parents, and there were a lot of them, had even filled the bleachers on their side of the infield. How many pitches did it take? Mr. Minyard said. He was doing what he always did when he got nervous during a game, taking off his cap and rubbing his forehead with both hands, like he was rubbing up a baseball. 6, Michael said, looking down at the pitch chart. That many, huh? He put his cap back on, stood up, yelled, "Time!" He looked back at Michael and said, meaning, "Time for me to go out and lie to Mr. Farrow a little bit." Mr. M stayed out there until the home plate umpire came out. And whatever he said must have worked because Anthony got the Giants out 1, 2, and 3 after that, but the damage was done. Michael ran out to coach third base when he got there. Justin was finishing his warm-up tosses. The catcher threw the ball down. Justin was finishing up his warm-up tosses. The catcher threw the ball down to the second of the Giants, whipped it around the field. When Justin got the ball back, he rubbed it a little, looking at Michael the whole time. Guess they don't have any age requirements about coaching third, though, huh? He said. He tried to smile, but looked more to Michael like a mean dog baring his teeth. Michael didn't say a word. He didn't look away, stared right back at him. No change of expression. But he didn't say a word. You weren't supposed to when you weren't really in the game, and he wasn't in the game, no matter how many signs he gave, even if he had helped the Clippers win that one time. "We gotta get to this guy," Manny said when he came off the field after the top of the second. Manny was with Michael on the bench. The Giants' catcher had been on base when Anthony got to third, so there was the slightest delay when he put his gear back on. Michael decided to stay on the bench rather than go out of his coaching box and have Justin dog him a little more. What did I do to become this guy's enemy? Michael kept asking himself, because a better pitcher than him, wasn't anybody in his league allowed to do that? "Hello," Manny said. "Did we lose radio contact here?" "I'm sorry," Michael said. "What were you saying?" Michael would never admit it to Manny, but sometimes he was just like background noise, like a game you had on and you weren't really listening to while you did something else. "We gotta get this guy, that's what I was saying." "I heard that part." "Well, then I said the same thing in a different way. How it was time to knock some of the stinking apples out of this guy's tree just to emphasize my point." "Another one of your signature moves," Michael said. "Very funny," Manny said. "Do you have any suggestions about old Justin?" Michael said, "Our hitters could stop by being a little more patient." "Right," Manny said. "We're already down 5 runs to this guy pitching you. But we've got 5 up left to make that up, or Justin the jerk, the complete jerk, goes to the stadium and we go home. And you want us to be patient?" "Pretty much." He ran out to his spot along the third base line and stood there helpless till Chris Norris struck out. Tommy Growney rolled one back to Justin for an easy second out, and Nate Collins struck out looking. With 1 out, the Giants loaded the bases at the top of the third against Anthony. Mr. M had seen enough and replaced him with Chris Norris. "All hands on deck now," he said. "Except for one," Michael said, holding up his left hand. "Yeah," Mr. M said. "Ain't that the truth?" Norris got a strikeout, 2 outs, but Justin was at the plate. Michael almost couldn't watch. He did what he did sometimes during a big moment in the Yankees game, almost closed his eyes, keeping them open just enough to see, as if you were watching through a slit in some closed blinds. On the first pitch, Justin, going the other way, an outside pitch, hit a screamer toward first base, and the ball sounding just as loud as when he hit his home run in the first. Michael opened his eyes all the way now, and he could see the ball going into the right field corner and clearing the bases, and Anthony Farrow got it. He just swapped positions with Norris and had even come over to get the first baseman mitt. Didn't matter. From where he was playing back and off in line because Justin was at the right-handed hitter. He drove toward the line, somehow knocked the ball down, ended up on his belly, part of him in fair territory, part of him in foul. At first he couldn't find the ball. Michael was sure Justin, coming hard down at the line, was going to get there before Anthony could get up. Except here came Chris Norris, running even harder from the pitcher's mound, covering the first base the way you were supposed to, but the way most pitchers hardly ever did in Little League. Anthony managed to get to his knees, underhanding the ball to Nurse in the same motion. Nurse hit the bag as Justin tried one of those head-first dives coaches told him never to try at first. The field umps running over to the middle of the field had a great look at the base. Out, he said. Justin, the front of the uniforms covered with dirt, jumped straight up in the air, hands grabbing for his batting helmet, taking it off his head like he planned to slam dunk the sucker. Michael thought, do it, because it would have meant an automatic ejection. Do it. Don't do it. Justin's dad had come running from the spot in the third base coach box. His voice froze Justin in mid-motion. It's not worth it. We've already got them beat. Like he was slapping everybody in the Clippers right across the face. Michael looked at Justin, wondering if he even listened to his father. Only Justin wasn't looking at his father now. He was looking past him, moved toward home plate, helmet still in his head, holding it like it was some kind of trophy. The Clippers infielder suddenly froze himself, were looking in the same direction. Mr. M was standing in Michael's left, blocking his view, but across the field Michael could see all the Westchester fans standing now, some of them pointing. Michael got around to Mr. M, moved out of the fence in front of the Clippers bench, saw what everybody else saw, the parade of people coming around the screen behind home plate, led by a man on crutches, his ankle in one of those big soft casts, El Grande, his daughter right beside him.